Hi guys, and welcome to another video. Today we are working on a iPad 9th Gen. This was brought to me by a customer that has brought me work before, so return customer. She took this iPad to a local repair shop where they replaced the digitizer, and to be brutally honest, they didn't do the best job. The actual digitizer they've used doesn't actually fit the screen very well, and it does have a gap all the way around. They've also not done a very good job of reinstalling the home button either. So what we have got to replace it is a brand new high quality aftermarket digitizer. Now I have bought the one with the replacement home button just in case I actually need to replace the home button. Now that does mean the customer will lose Touch ID, but it does mean that they'll have a fully functioning home button rather than one that works half the time. I will try and swap it over. If I'm unsuccessful, the customer has given the go ahead for that to be swapped over as well. So what we are going to do is I would normally remove these screens using heat, but as you'll see in a moment, this one comes off really easily. No heat needed. I'm literally sliding the screen removal tool under the edge and just cutting away the adhesive that's there. This is just a plastic wheel. It just goes in, usually with the help of heat, helps to actually cut through that adhesive and separate the digitizer from the housing. But as you can see, I'm not even needing to use heat for this one. When it was reapplied, it wasn't applied very well. The frame itself wasn't cleaned, which led to the screen coming off as easily as you can see here. All we're doing is just gently working around the edge until we get the screen free and we can lift it up. Obviously, as you release one part, there's a good chance that it's going to drop back down and you'll end up having to detach. I think at the moment I am literally just caught on this top edge and down where the home button is. Obviously, I'm trying to be extra careful not to damage the home button any more than it already is. And we are just going to gently pry away. Not too worried if this screen breaks. We prefer that the digitizer didn't break, but we're not too worried if it does crack. Now, the item that you can see in front is one of my own designs. It's for repairing iPads and stuff, tablets, and it holds the screen out the way. It's great for when you've got an iPad like this where the digitizer and the screen's actually separated. You've got one arm that will hold the digitizer up, and then, as you'll see in a moment, you've got the other arm that supports the LCD while the brackets and stuff are removed. We're just going to go through and slowly remove, well, take our time removing the screws. There was only 3 screws holding the LCD in place, and there should be 4, one in each corner. Obviously one of them wasn't put back. Not a biggie, but if we had spare screws we would put one in there. but we don't, so we're just going to return it to the way it was when we received it. Obviously better digitizer, but we're just going to remove the well, before we remove the bracket, what we are going to do is we are going to shim underneath the battery connector. So the battery connector actually sits under the motherboard on these, and as you can see, I am trying to slide a piece of plastic. What I end up doing is cutting a small rectangle with a little cutout that you can actually get around the screw hole that's there for the battery holder. As you can see, I'm not having much luck at the moment, and in a second I will decide to trim that plastic away. All I'm doing is I'm just making a little shim that goes in between the actual battery connector, as I say, that sits under the board, and the two battery terminals that are actually on the board. As you can see, that now I've done that little slit, that slides in nicely. And what I'm going to do is just make sure that the iPad is off and it doesn't turn on, because the last thing we want to do is cause any damage to the screen or the digitizer while taking it off, or even the board for that matter, because there has been occasions where not disconnecting the battery properly can cause issues with the main board, cause shorts. There's, if I remember, 3 small screws holding this bracket in place. You see me removing now. We'll take those out, and underneath there is 3 connectors. There are 2 that pop off, so there'll be the one for the LCD screen itself, as you can see, a few finger marks on that, and there is 2 for the digitizer, and there's also the home button connector as well to remove. Just be careful when removing that, because the little plastic clip can break, which you'll see later in the video. I actually get under the microscope with that, and you're able to see the damage caused by the previous shop. Now I'm doing an inspection of the home button here, and it's extremely loose, and to be honest with you, you can't see it in the video there, but there was damage to the flex cable. This is the moment I decided that I would rather the customer had a 100% working home button minus Touch ID than her having to come back to me in 4 or 5 months, if not sooner, because the home button has caused issues and, you know, is not working completely because of the damage to the flex cable. What I'm doing here is I am doing a quick install just to make sure the digitizer works. So I'm just literally going to put it together, bare bones, and be able to just test the digitizer. And here we can see the flex connector for the home button that I was on about earlier. As you can see, it was previously damaged, or it's damaged, and it was done by the previous shop that was working on this. Now luckily for us, it does apply enough pressure and holds it in place. I have informed the customer. At the time of doing the repair, I didn't have connectors, and the customer had already had the tablet with me for about 4 or 5 days at this point, waiting for the replacement digitizer to come in, and they were happy to have it back. And they did say to me that obviously in the future, if it needs doing, they'll come to me and we'll get that sorted. But you know, obviously I spoke to the customer about this before I handed it back. But I did test it, and it does hold on to the ribbon connector, the flex, quite well. So as you can see, as I've brought up in other videos, making sure the flex connectors go in the right way round. As you can see here, or those that you that work on Apple, I popped it in the wrong way round, but there we go, get it in the right way, and we're just going to use a pair of tweezers just to gently just push it in all the way, and it makes sure it's nice and snug. Now it looks like I was being a bit more brutal there than I was, because that video was sped up, but I can assure you I was actually being relatively gentle. So basic assembly, not gluing anything down at the moment, literally just making sure it turns on and the digitizer itself works and the home button works. Now you'll probably notice on the screen that there'll be a small pop-up that is saying that Touch ID is not recognised, which we know about, and the customer's well aware of at this point. Right, so we have given it a good test, we've had a look at it, and we've checked the function of the home button, make sure it works, we've checked the function of the digitizer, and I am literally just double checking that home button, whether, you know, do I risk it? And I think it was actually at this point I decided, no, I'm not going to risk it, I'm just going to give them the new home button. The iPads for a child, they're not overly fussed about the Touch ID, but yeah, no, it's nice and responsive, which is another thing the customer was complaining about. The touch on it, on this digitizer itself, on the screen, wasn't the best. You touch in one spot and it would be somewhere else, but with regards to this, there's no issues there. It's nice and responsive, and how I would expect it to be. So at this point I'm going to I think I actually I'm going to shut the iPad down, and I'm going to get it ready to get it cleaned up and get it ready to install primer and adhesive. Right, so I have been round, given the frame a good clean, and made sure all the parts that are supposed to be where they are where they are. I've also been round and made sure that all the old adhesive has been removed from the frame, and what I am about to grab out of the drawer is a small bottle of 3M primer, and this stuff was recommended to me from Wayne at Get Refurbed. He does a lot more screen repairs and phone repairs, stuff like that. He's the one that got me into doing screens and phones, and he said this stuff is absolutely brilliant for making sure the actual adhesive bonds to the frame properly, and as you'll see in a second, it's literally as simple as dab of cotton bud in it, run it around the edge, and you let it sit for 10 minutes, roughly the amount of time it takes to get the tablet back together. By the time you've done that, it's gone off, and it's almost slightly, well, there's a very slight tack to it, but yeah, so we'll get the edge primed and ready for the screen to go back on. just going through, removing the adhesive now from getting the adhesive free, getting everything lined up and ready to go back in. I do have a few, I do struggle a little bit getting the connectors back in. Sometimes they just slip in, no issues. Other times, there is a issue with them. You know, I struggle to get them lined up properly. We are literally just finishing up the install, and I am just going to go round and remove the protective backing from the screen. A little bit of confusion when I first got this. I didn't realise there was a protective backing on there, and I'm thinking, why have they stuck something to the inner screen? It's going to be a pain to remove. No, as you see here, nice and easily peels off, and we're then just going to peel off the adhesive around the edges. That way then we can get it lined up and in place and ready to go back into the housing. So sometimes a pair of tweezers can help to get in there and get the edges of the adhesive. Sometimes it does have a little tab that sticks out. You see, struggling a little bit there to get these. The last thing I want to do is get my fingerprints and the greases and oils from my hands all over the adhesive, but just going to manoeuvre this so I can get the adhesive out without, the bit out without catching on the cables. Obviously making sure I don't accidentally stick the adhesive down, because you kind of get one shot with these. Once they're in place, they are they don't like to move afterwards. And all I'm going to do is line that back edge up where the same side as the flex cables, line that edge up, get that edge in place, and then it should just nicely just drop in, and then I am going to run around the edges with my fingers and just slip the screen into place, making sure that it's snug within the frame. Being careful that if it hasn't seated down properly, not to just push on it, because these digitizers will just disintegrate, they will crack. It's not the first time, but this is, you know, I have broken a digitizer when putting it on, and I've had to order a second digitizer. Luckily it was for me rather than for a customer, but it's not good when you're having to spend out again on replacing a part. But once it's on, what I will do, another tip from Wayne at Get Refurbed, is I will put this back on the hot plate. I will also add a bit of weight, because I don't have any clamps at the moment, so I'm going to put a nice heavy book on there on the heat plate, get it nice and warm, heat soaked, so the adhesive softens. The weight will compress the adhesive, and as it cools, it should hold nice and firm, and it should almost, as Wayne puts it, be as sealed as factory fresh, a nice factory fresh seal. But quick test of the screen again, all's working great. So there we have it, another successful repair on an iPad. Thank you very much guys for watching. I really appreciate the support. I'm flabbergasted by the subscribers and the response to the videos. I hope to see you again in the next one. If you like the video, if you could hit the thumbs up, and if you've not subscribed, if you could hit the subscribe button, I'd really appreciate it. Take care guys, see you in the next video. Keep it going.